We have a breaking news update right now. An artillery shell from the United States military prematurely detonated over an interstate in California and damaged Vice President JD Vance's security detail. That's a real headline. And it goes to the point I'm making for a long time that we need to stop sane washing what is happening in this administration and what is happening in the United States of America. Earlier this week, I exclusively reported from Midas Touch that Donald Trump would be conducting a vanity parade of sorts for the Marine Corps' 250th anniversary in Camp Pendleton in Southern California. This vanity parade went on yesterday. As part of my exclusive reporting, I said that the Marines or the Navy would be planning on sending live fire over Interstate 5, which is one of the busiest interstates in Southern California, into Camp Pendleton. All of that turned out to be true. My reporting also said that I-5 would have to be closed down for periods of time. Governor Newsom ended up closing down I-5 for 4 hours yesterday because of the live fire drills happening over the highway. When I first reported on this, everyone on the internet, a lot of people, told me that I was fear-mongering, told me that this is a routine event, that artillery is almost always, every year pretty much, shot over this busy interstate into Camp Pendleton. Well, here's the thing, folks. That fear-mongering of sorts was just sane-washing a real headline from this administration. Because just minutes ago, we learned that according to the New York Times, one of those artillery shells, part of that live fire drill, exploded prematurely over Interstate 5. And fragments from that live artillery shell fell on a vehicle within JD Vance's security detail. Let that sink in. Imagine the street wasn't closed. Imagine one of the busiest interstates in all of California had, let's say, thousands of cars, hundreds of cars, even a dozen cars in that section at that time. And they were hit with fragments from an artillery shell coming from a ship across in the ocean, because all Donald Trump and JD Vance wanted, on the same day as No King's Day, they wanted to have this vanity kind of celebration for the Marine Corps, the 250th anniversary that doesn't actually fall on a date until next month. And so I want to come to you tonight and talk about something serious, and that is sane washing. Whether it's the media or now many in American society, many are sane washing what is coming out of this administration. And as a journalist, I refuse to do so. So please consider subscribing to support my work. Let's talk about what sane washing is first. Sane washing, essentially, is a term I try to coin that refers to a growing trend where both the media and the public normalize or excuse alarming political behavior simply because it has become familiar to them, especially when it's coming from Donald Trump or members of his administration. We see it used casually almost every day because people say, oh, well, that it's just Trump, or just Trump is being Trump, almost akin to the phrase, boys will be boys, right? It's the same type of phrasing that we see. But those phrases really lower our standards for our political leaders. We have decided in this moment that behavior, once considered unthinkable for any public official, is now just part of the show. So we talked about what happened at Camp Pendleton, this live fire artillery drill that happened over I-5, the sane washing of exclusive reporting that I did and that I got attacked for earlier this week. But let's just take the past 24 hours, for example. Remember, in response to No King's Day yesterday, Donald Trump posted an AI-generated video showing himself in a fighter jet, wearing a crown, dumping feces on Americans who were protesting, one of whom was Democratic activist Harry Sisson. Instead of condemning the video or calling for a basic level of presidential dignity, Vice President JD Vance went on Twitter to attack Sisson personally and promised to ask Trump personally why he posted that AI-generated video. This was not an offhand comment or a late-night rant. It was a deliberate statement from the sitting Vice President of the United States while the government remains shut down for now day 19. Meanwhile, as federal workers go unpaid, the president spent today lashing out on critics on Truth Social, and the vice president mirrored his tone on Twitter. Now, I want to take a second and take a step back. Imagine if the roles were reversed. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Imagine that they had shared this doctored video targeting private citizens during a government shutdown. Every conservative outlet in the entire country would be demanding their resignation. The 25th Amendment would be on the table for President Joe Biden. The outrage would be endless. And honestly, Donald Trump would jump in on the outrage and would be talking about it on Truth Social in this moment. But because it's Donald Trump, the story is barely breaking through. That is what sane washing looks like. It also is the same thing that happened with my exclusive reporting. What was first dismissed as impossible, as another headline coming out of a publication like The Onion, well, it's become yet another example of how recklessness at the highest levels of government is being normalized, and how dangerous that normalization truly is. And this normalization is not just limited to Washington, D.C. It's seeping into how everyday Americans view their news. Because remember when Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth claimed during a meeting with a Qatari official that Qatari would, quote, build a military facility at a U.S. base in Idaho? The internet immediately erupted with disbelief. Thousands insisted he must have misspoken or he didn't know what he was talking about. Why? Because many assumed he was still thinking like a Fox News host, not the Secretary of Defense. That knee-jerk disbelief, that assumption that something so absurd could not possibly be true, is itself a product of sane washing. This news cycle has become so chaotic, folks, that our instinct now is to dismiss shocking developments as exaggerations instead of reckoning with how real and how dangerous they are. And it's the media's responsibility here to hold all leaders, regardless of political party, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, to the same standard of truth and accountability. When journalists minimize or rationalize misconduct because that's just how Trump operates, they erode the public's understanding of what is acceptable in a democracy. And I'll just say this, I refuse to do that. Every day, my work is rooted in calling things what they are, not what we wish they are, not what is politically convenient, and not what we have grown numb to. Because when we stop expecting integrity and when we start normalizing chaos, when we convince ourselves that it's just Trump being Trump, we no longer are protecting democracy. We are participating in its decline. And that's exactly why we have to stop sane washing in these United States of America. And so tonight I come with you urgently pleading, please stop sane washing. And please hold media figures, please hold those in power more accountable. An equal standard, regardless of whether they have a D or an I or an R next to their name. Thank you for your support. Subscribe, like, comment, share, and I'll see you in the morning.